musical performance is a phenomenon which requires multimodal approaches, implying a conceptual work and practical skills. The cognitive process in musical interpretation is led by the interaction between the performer's creative skills and the score. In the act of learning and embodying music, the performer has to collect multi-sources to encode, that is, interpret, and enact, that is, perform, a score. The performer has to combine implicit and explicit knowledge gathered from his own practical skills and cultural background. My performative experiment wants to investigate the performance practice procedure through the use of technology, in this case, the motion capture system. The aim is to develop a performer's analysis method to describe, to analyze, and evaluate in a systematic way intentionality in music performance. My experimentation would address two questions: how to map intentionality in music performance, and second, how does explicit knowledge gathered from different music traditions determine the final results of the performance in terms of musical gestures and expressivity. Since my performative experiment wants to capture a lived performance experience through the motion capture system, I thought to set up the experiment in a hall in the Mirizal at the Conservatory of GHENT and not in a laboratory, in order to recreate the natural environment of a concert performance. The data acquired by the motion capture system consist in quantitative measurements of the performative deliberate corporal movements determined by the cognitive acts. In music performance, gestures, movements correspond to intentional actions which symbolize and reflects musical meaning. We should consider that the expressivity of musical gesture is a determinant means to communicate music to the audience. In my performative experiment, I focused specifically on the expressive intentional gestures of the upper part of the body. In particular, I marked the back, the head, both elbows and hands, which are captured by 6 infrared cameras set in an hexagonal configuration on a fixed bridge. During the performance, recorded by the motion capture system, it is possible to follow the performer's choreography on a screen. Since I want to focus on the interweaving of Western and Indian music tradition, I chose to perform for this experiment the 8th cycle of the 70 Etudes Karnatiques for piano, written by the French composer Jacques Charpentier. Jacques Charpentier wrote this etude for piano by applying the 72 modes taken from the South India music tradition, called indeed Karnatic. My performative experiment is structured into 3 sections. Performance section 1, which is a live performance of the entire piece. Second, fragment sections, which comprise also the explanation of the intentional movement chosen to perform 3 fragments taken from the piece. In this section, the live talking plus the live performing want to recall intentions and experiences made during the performance practice. I analyzed the score actually in function of the performance. So at first, I elaborated a music performing model to analyze the score in function of the performance. So at first, I describe in 3 steps the performance practice procedure. The first step is about what the score represents. So how to enact a score, how to perform in terms of gestures and movements. Why I'm going to choose this kind of performance intentions on practicing, I also made a score annotation in function of the performance. So at first, I analyzed the musical structures of the first fragment that is divided in 4 sub-phrases plus 1 repetition. The technical feature of this fragment, it is about broken chords on the Karnatic mode called embodied. In fact, this fragment presents the scale embodied, but in the whole register of the piano. The composer wrote that we have to play these notes with accent and legato. The first approach, so the approach based by the implicit knowledge that I have from the score, is to play with accent, fortissimo, and legato. So you can see that my hands are very blocked on the keyboard to play this kind of legato. The sound, the timbre, is very close into the piano. In the cycle of the Mela Carta Ragas, so in the legend, Vasu is the elements of nature. By talking with the composer, he told me that actually this piece is related also to this idea of creation of the universe. And for him, the resonance of each note is very important. So after this meeting, I gathered some other knowledge, explicit knowledge, and I changed actually the movements of my body, but also the fingerings, to reach a powerful sound, a resonant timbre. So I started to move like that, not playing exactly legato, but giving accent to each note and changing the fingerings in that manner. Increasing the movement of my elbows and the movement of the hands, and also involving all the body in the performance, I could arise actually this kind of powerful timbre. The final section implies again a live performance of the entire piece. Since I am at the same time the performer participant at the experiment and the researcher, this retrospective allows me to complement subjectivism by comparing both approaches: the self-report method, that is, the qualitative top-down approach, and the empirical perspective gathered from the motion capture system, that is, the quantitative bottom-up approach. I processed the data through the Elan software for annotating video and audio recordings. The correspondence of the qualitative and quantitative data would validate my hypothesis on the correlation between intentionality and musical gestures in the artistic process of embodying a music performance. Thus, my performative experiment would give new insights in the field of music interpretation and performance practice, while opening further investigations on embodied music cognition.